Want a quick 10-minute wrap-up of the week's compliance news? Well, this is the podcast for you, 10 for 10, where Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, wraps up 10 top compliance stories which occurred over the past week. If you don't know, Tom has a daily news podcast, appropriately called the Daily Compliance News, and 10 for 10 wraps up the week. So get up on a Saturday morning, have a great cup of coffee, and check out 10 for 10, the podcast which gives you the week's top compliance news. Are you interested in upping your game in compliance through the use of AI and machine learning technology? Well, check out my latest book, Upping Your Game, How Compliance and Risk Management Move to 2030 and Beyond. You can check it out in the show notes. I've got a link to the purchase at Amazon.com. Upping Your Game. Top compliance stories from the week ending June 28, 2025. First up, disgraced banker Jess Staley was not able to get his ban from working in the financial industry in the United Kingdom overturned, as he failed to overturn a decision by the Financial Conduct Authority that he recklessly misled the UK regulator about his ties to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Staley, well known for his, lack of tone at the top, had his basically tail end handed to him by a tribunal, which said that he had a serious failure of judgment and he acted without integrity. Well, if that's one description of Jess Staley, that would seem to be the lasting one. Next up, when is a lawsuit settlement a bribe payment? Well, apparently Paramount is wrestling with that question, as it is in consideration and in talks to settle President Trump's false advertising claim against CBS for CBS's interview of Kamala Harris back in the show 60 Minutes. Everyone agrees that the suit is baseless and probably vexatious and brought for harassment purposes, but Paramount's trying to do a merger, and it's viewed that unless this suit is settled, the FCC will not let the merger go through. So the FCC has categorically denied there's any connection. I know you're shocked to hear that, between its approval and the multi-million-dollar check that the Justice Department that the Justice Department won't poke around, but you know, it's the Trump administration, so everything's for sale. So what happens if there's a new administration in 4 years and they deem this a bribe payment? Well, Paramount's directors are going to have to decide. Next up, in a huge congratulatory piece for our good friend and colleague Matt Galvin, who was selected as one of the most innovative lawyers of corporate in-house legal departments by the Financial Times. They specifically shouted out to Galvin, who, when he was the head of compliance at AB InBev, for adding ethics to his role as the company realized the power of his work in its remediation of alleged FCPA violations with data analytics to affect more compliant behaviors in its workforce. Really, really exciting news for Matt Galvin and really the entire compliance community for his efforts to be so recognized. Next up, AI and OpenAI defeated a lawsuit brought by Meta, which said that AI could not use U.S. copyrighted information to train its bot. Well, this was Anthropic, not OpenAI, but the court ruled that the use of authors' books and other copyrighted work was exceedingly transformative and then allowed under U.S. law. So this was a huge win for AI, and it is something that we will expect to see more of going forward. Next up, a huge shout out to Natalia Shaheda. Her entire integrity and compliance team at ABB and the company itself for being released early from its deferred prosecution agreement. Listeners will remember that back in December of 23, ABB was levied with its third FCPA violation, making it the first third-time loser under the FCPA. Yet, because of the company's commitment to compliance and integrity and Natalia and her team's great work, the company got out of their DPA early. So a huge win for compliance, a huge win for ABB, and a huge win for Natalia Shaheda and her entire compliance and integrity team. The Globe and Mail asks, are Canadian companies at risk as the U.S. has watered down its anti-corruption efforts? Well, if U.S. anti-corruption efforts are only going to be based on bribery and corruption, which hurt U.S. business interests, what does that mean for Canada? Great question from the Globe and Mail. And it will also be interesting about whether the U.S. will use this as a weapon against Canadian corporations. It is clear that Trump is trying to attack all Canadian corporations simply because he wants to make them the 51st state and get all their taxable income. But whether they're going to use it this way or not, it's a great question for them to ask. What about bias in hiring? Well, that's a question that a gentleman named Derek Mobley has raised when he applied for over 100 jobs in his designated field of IT, and he was rejected for all of them. And this is obviously a very odd, and even with a bell curve distribution, you would expect him to receive some communications back, at least getting him to the next level, but they all involve a third-party service, Workday. So does Workday have bias built into its algorithms? He's brought a lawsuit which the court is going to allow to proceed. Mobley is both African-American and over 40, so he's got two different types of protections. And there's really no reason why with 100 job applications he would get 0 back. It just sort of defies logic. Now, Workday says nothing discriminatory in our algorithm, but of course, no one knows why. Next up in a sad story, the U.S. State Department has warned U.S. travelers to exercise increased caution when traveling. Why? Because the Trump administration has basically been such a jerk to countries that were our friends, countries that were not our friends, and everybody in between. So if you're a U.S. citizen traveling abroad, given the way that ICE and other agencies have treated travelers coming into the United States, you better expect, or you could well expect to be the subject of abuse, be the subject of mistreatment, whether this is going to lead to actions in foreign countries that the U.S. government has engaged in, particularly the unwarranted arrest of tourists. It's going to be a difficult time for many, many people going forward. Next up from the Wall Street Journal, CFO Journal reports that the PCAOB elimination plans have hit a roadblock in the Senate. Republican lawmakers attempt to destroy the PCAOB and take away the clear oversight that it provides over the audit community, hit a roadblock when the Senate parliamentarian determined that the provision in the broader tax bill violates rules around budget and reconciliation. The parliamentarian noted it violated the Byrd rule and that the Republicans who want to do away with it certainly have the right to seek that, but not this way. And finally, Tesla is in more trouble again, this time in France, for deceptive trades and practices, which of course they deny. Have a great weekend. I'd also urge you to check out the Daily Compliance News, which posts every week from Monday to Friday, where I give 4 curated stories of bribery, corruption, and compliance events that will allow you to help you start your day as well. So check out the Daily Compliance News and subscribe or rate and review to both 10 for 10 and the Daily Compliance News. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of 10 for 10. I hope you'll check out the newest podcast in the Compliance Podcast Network, the Compliance Tip of the Day. In Compliance Tip of the Day, I give a 5 to 8 minute summary of one tip that you can integrate into your compliance program or put together for greater compliance program efficiency. Finally, if you're a Sherlock Holmes fan, I am preparing a new season of Adventures in Compliance where I go through the 4 novels of Sherlock Holmes. Hear it on the Compliance Podcast Network.